This is episode 70 of the Gauntlet podcast. My name is Jason.
My name is Tim.
I'm Andrea.
And I'm Rich.
So Rich and I got a chance to play The Black Hack, and a lot of people I know are kind of waiting to hear what we think of it. You know, I want to kind of dig into it a little bit.
Yeah,
Rich.
yeah, let's do that.
But just a quick overview. The Black Hack it's a very, very stripped down OSR first edition AD&D game, I guess. Is that fair, do you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It seems to have taken a few things from other games. Like I saw there's a little bit of D&D 5e in there. I thought there was a touch of Torchbearer and Dungeon World in there as well. Mm-hmm. At its core, it's kind of just a really, really stripped down D&D that uses skill checks rather than like rolling to hit against armor class or whatever.
Right.
I like that part of it, actually. I thought the skill check, or the sort of stat check rather aspect of it was good. Like you roll underneath your stat to succeed at something. It made it kind of easy to sort of arbitrate what you should be rolling at any given time. I thought that was pretty straightforward. The classes have a very little set, a little tiny set of core abilities that kind of really get to the heart of what that class is all about. It's just really, really stripped down, sort of pure dungeon crawling D&D, right? So let's talk about some of the things we liked about it, Rich. I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you're going to have a game with initiative, which is something I'm not normally a fan of, it might as well be this sort of initiative, because I thought the initiative system was quite good. You basically, everyone does a dexterity check, and if you pass the dexterity check, then you get to go before the monsters. And if you don't pass the dexterity check, you go after the monsters. And depending on which group you're in, you just decide amongst, at the table, who's going to go first. I thought that was a fairly quick, elegant way of doing initiative. What'd you think?
Yeah, I like it. The choosing who goes next within a strata of that success is almost like Marvel superheroes.
I thought the same thing. Yeah, Marvel Heroic.
Oh, yeah. Marvel Heroic, except a little bit of a strata, which is kind of cool, adding some dicing to it.
Yeah, and it worked well. I was worried that it was going to be really clunky, because I'm always suspicious of initiative, right? And but it was okay. I didn't find it to be too intrusive or anything. I liked that it uses 5e advantage disadvantage die. That was really, really cool. I love that conceptually from 5e. I've never played 5e, but so I like that they used it in this game, and it seemed to work pretty well, as best I could tell. We only did one session, so I'd have to kind of play with it a little bit more. And then I also like that whenever you reach 0 hit points, you roll on this table to see what your character's final outcome is. You have so you roll d6, and if you get a 6, then your character's dead. And if you get one of the other results, it's increasing levels of injury, basically, right?
Right.
And I thought that was pretty cool. I thought we didn't get to see it because we only played one session and no one hit 0 hit points, but I liked where it was going. It seemed like it could create some fun tension at the table. It reminded me a little bit of visiting the Black Gate in Dungeon World, which I thought was pretty cool. What did you like about the game?
The advantage, disadvantage, you can't say enough good about that as an aspect of any game. It's my favorite part of 5e that's different from your normal D&D type stuff, so I love that that's part of it. Player-facing rules is really cool. It allows the DM, GM to really focus on telling the story and statting up kind of the ideas or narratively. I also love, and this is kind of out of the scope of our play, but there is this whole community that's just exploded.
Yeah.
It's like a $2
really
game. It's 20 some pages, and there's not just the Black Hack. There's an alien version. There's
the Mutant Crawl Classic.
Yeah, there's the Rad Hack, the Jack Hack. It's all these cool hacks. It's exciting. I love that spirit with the whole community behind Black Hack. It's that indie spirit that I love.
And that's what drew me to it, right? It's not normally the sort of game I would play, but I was really, really excited about the stuff that was going on around this game, and I had to take a look, right? It kind of demanded to be played, I felt like. So here's the thing. I think that as I was playing the Black Hack, it occurred to me that I don't think that, for me personally, Dungeons & Dragons has too many rules. I think it's more that I just don't necessarily like what the rules are doing, or I'm not into that kind of style of play anymore. Because to me, I really liked a lot of what the Black Hack was doing, and I was really into its goals, I guess. But I found myself just not finding the play style particularly to my taste anymore, because in fact I would have loved this back in my 2E days. I would have thought this was really cool, right? And I still do think it's kind of cool, but it's just kind of not for me. What do you think?
Black Hack is just, it's made to do the thing, which is let's go crawl in a dungeon, and crawling in a dungeon is combat and puzzles, neither of which am I very good at.
The whole time I was playing it, I was having a hard time with how loose the game felt to me. Like, it felt a little loose, and I felt almost like I was missing something as GMing the game. Like, I needed a little bit more to like hang things on top of, because we would have situations where you roll to do this thing and you fail. What happens now? Right? Like, in Powered by the Apocalypse games, I know what happens now, right? I get to do a cool fucking thing because I'm the GM and that gives me a move to do, right? But in this game, I felt like, well, I guess I could run it that way. I guess I could go ahead and like, fail forward, make it be like a cool thing. But then it felt like fiat to me, and I had a bit of an issue with that.
Yeah, you're in a 20-page game, and so a lot of things are stripped down, and I think there were some assumptions in building the game that people were coming from a certain play style that kind of already grokked that.
Right.
It's actually, there were moments where I almost felt like I was playing Ghost Lines. Like, if I sat at John Harper's table, I would probably not get lost on these 4 pages.
Right, yeah. Which is the thing that happens in that 4-page game.
Every single time I run Ghost Lines, I get lost.
It just, I know. It just felt like fiat to me. Like, I felt uncomfortable, kind of fucking with the players outside of just like you failed at the thing you were doing, because there were no rules that told me I could do that, right? And that kind of I felt a little uncomfortable doing it. Same thing with like I really, really missed like a sort of like complicated success, or a success
right.
with complications. Like, I missed that. Like, in this game, you either succeed or you don't succeed. So from my vantage point, it was like, okay, well, you did the thing, awesome. But I kind of wanted there to be more. Like, I wanted the option of like having it be like occasionally it being like you do the thing, but there's this complication. And I could have, and again, I think I could have run it that way, but it just felt like it would just be me making that decision. And as the GM, and I felt a little uncomfortable with that. Same thing with the leveling.
Yes.
Like the leveling is basically just GM fiat. It's like, okay, I think you guys should level now, so you do. I didn't like that. I mean, I get the spirit behind it. Like, I totally get it. Like, I get what they were going for. But to me, it didn't seem satisfying. And again, I felt uncomfortable as a GM making those decisions. And so I think Powered by the Apocalypse games, sometimes there's this impression that they are like mechanics light or rules light, but that's actually not true. They actually have like lots of mechanics. They have mechanics that do very specific things, and they drive play in a very specific sort of way. And so I just wasn't accustomed to this, and it kind of wasn't my jam in that way.
I get that. Again, I'm curious about some of the other so there's one hack of the Black Hack called the anime hack. I'm going to be running that at some point, mostly because it just looks like a crazy amount of mixed up fun. And I'm just going to run it like I would run Dungeon World. That's what I'm going to do.
I think if I did it again, I would too. I would have to just get over some of my hangups about it and just do it, right? Anyway, just to kind of wrap it up here, we've been going for a while. I think the Black Hack is a really cool thing. I think if you're an OSR gamer or you're really into Dungeons and Dragons, you should give this a shot. Like, this is a cool like implementation of the game. It does a lot of really neat little things. Like, it's some things I didn't mention before, but like, you track your ammo and your torches with like a die that you keep on your character sheet. Like, that's fucking cool,
yeah.
Right? It's just little things like that. I like that it kind of gets to the point. It tells you just what you need to know to make the monsters go. I loved all that. It's just not for me. But like you said, I'm glad it exists. I'm glad that this community is around it, and I'm glad when any game design sort of like movement or community is trying to boil something down to its essentials. I love that spirit, But yeah, I think this is not my game. I just think it's not. It just does not fit my play style. I still love the OSR though. Like, my love for the OSR is unbound, because I'm a huge fan of the side of the OSR that's all about like cool modules and settings, and I will continue to do those things, but just in Dungeon World. Or lately, World of Dungeons. I've taken a page from Tom McGrenery's book, and I'm going to try doing some unconverted OSR modules using World of Dungeons to see how that goes. But that's all I had to say about it. So we'll keep going here. Andrea, we've covered Numenera before, but What do you think about Numenera? I'd be curious to get your take on it because we haven't had much experience with it at our tables, I don't think, yet.
Sure. I've actually played quite a bit of Numenera. Numenera, I have very complex feelings about because I love the character creation system. Like, I love being able to say my character does this thing, and that describes everything mechanically about your character in one sentence. I think that is so cool. But the world is such a kitchen sink that I can't find anything about it that I'm like, this is why I play this game. But there's a flip side to that, right? Because you can go in and say, like my boyfriend did. My boyfriend's like, I'm going to play the Doctor from Doctor Who. And the GM's like, yeah, that totally works. Let's do it. So it's really cool
Right.
because it's so incredibly flexible like that. So we're just starting off a short campaign of it. And I'm really looking forward to playing it because, we have the Doctor in the party. And I'm playing like a crazy person, which I don't often get to do, who's obsessed with bugs.
Okay.
Yeah, and she has one that like follows her around and nobody's sure if it's imaginary or, if it really exists. So I'm looking forward to playing with that. This particular GM is really good at reading kind of what the players are wanting to do and really looking at their backstories and saying, oh, you mentioned this. This is what I'm going to pull into the story. And you mentioned this and I'm going to
Yeah,
pull
that's
this
good.
in.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
so important in like the kitchen sink setting.
Definitely in that setting, right? I mean, I have the book and I have attempted to read it a couple times. It's not an easy read. And it's super interesting and fascinating. It's visually striking. I feel overwhelmed by it. And it's such a big, complex, ornate setting that it leaves me a little cold.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's always been kind of my issue with it. I'd be curious what you think about like Numenera sometimes gets accused of trying to have it both ways in terms of like crunch versus more like narrative focused play. Like, what do you think about that?
Oh, it's totally a crunch game. I don't
Okay.
I don't care what anybody says.
Give us all the tea. I love it.
Yeah.
That's good.
I mean, again, like you have that very simple statement about your character, but that gives you like a bunch of skills. It gives you a bunch of abilities. It gives you a bunch of things that you're not so good at. So there's a lot of crunch. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into your character from that simple statement. So it's a crunchy game, and then there's sometimes math involved depending on who your GM is, and I don't like the math.
Yes, we've established that. The math is. I don't think the math is
No,
one of our friends.
no.
So yeah, I didn't go to law school to do math. That's for sure. So, how many sessions do you think you've played of it? Like, if you had to just guess a number or whatever.
Probably 15-ish, just with various different people.
Okay, that's solid. Yeah, that's good. I'm dying to play it at some point. I just need someone to run it for me. It's not the kind of game I'm ever going to get to my own table. I'm gonna have to just find a game and do it. But yeah, cool. Numenera. Is there anything else?
I was just going to say our Sunday group, the Intercontinental Group of Awesome, we've got two pretty good Numenera GMs at our table, and they both run Numenera for me. And Andrew, you were in the last one, but not the first one that Alex ran, right?
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I remember, Rich, you talked about it once before, I think, and I can't remember where you came down on it though. Like, what is your thoughts on it?
It's just hard to grab the idea of exploration being how you get XP, but then it just doesn't feel like it's necessarily mechanically supported. So there's a whole lot of mechanics except about the reward mechanic, and that seems weird to me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, all the mechanics are just basically fighting,
Yep.
right? Or yeah, okay. All right, cool. Yeah, I'd have to get that shot sometime. Well, Andrea, is there anything else you want to talk about?
You really do have to find somebody who is a little looser with the rules, I guess. But all the GMs I've had, like, the game's been fun. It's not my favorite game in the whole world, but I've enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
They've all come at the rules from different places. It's not like D&D where you look at it and it's like, oh, this is obviously a skill check and this is another skill check and now you roll a save.
Right, yeah.
So I think there's different ways to interpret the rules, or there's some give and take, and I've definitely had more fun with the looser rule style.
It's good to know that's the case. I mean, normally I've become less of a strict rules as written guy over the last couple of years. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but like when I first got back into the hobby, I was coming straight off German board games, right? That's when I was playing with German board games and like nonstop, right? And so when I came to the hobby, I was like, the rules must work a certain way and they are meant to be done a certain way and we will not deviate from them. Like I was really hardcore about it. Like if I can't play this game precisely as it's written and it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Like that's it. I've eased up on that a lot because I think you have to, because these games it's role playing. It's not easy to do, right?
Yeah, when you get into a narrative style of game, which is our forte, it's really hard to insert those rules sometimes. There are times when I'll talk about it in a little bit when we talk about masks, where I'm like, that was a really great scene, but I think we should back up because we hit like 3 moves in a row.
Right, yeah. Rich, I'm glad you said that. I'll be anxious to hear what you have to say, because I find myself lately like letting a scene roll and not triggering the move like when it probably should have triggered, because I'm so into like the RP that's going on,
Yeah.
And I think that's right? Like, I mean, sometimes the players will stop me and say, oh, I was trying to do this, and I'll be like, okay, we'll do that. Cool. Any more Numenera?
No.
Thoughts?
Oh, well, one thing, if you do play it, Jason, the person you want to look for is you want Darcy Ross to run this game for you. I have heard nothing but applause and amazement from her Numenera game. She's actually got a new Numenera themed podcast that she just started on the Misdirected Mark Network.
Cool.
And so she's really all about it. That would be the person you want to target.
Cool. Tim, I own Cold Soldier. I've had it for a long time, but I've never played it. What's Cold Soldier about?
So it's by this guy named Brett Gillen, who made this game called The Final Girl. Has anyone heard of that?
Nope, doesn't ring a bell at all,
So
actually.
it's based off a movie, right?
I think it is. Yeah, I remember the movie. So
There is a movie called The Final Girl,
Yes.
so yeah, I think you're right.
yeah, so that's it. End of story. So Cold Soldier, my understanding is it was first published to this website, 1KM, 1KT, 1,000 Monkeys, 1,000 Typewriters, which, if it doesn't ring a bell...
It doesn't.
Well, no. So they hosted Game Chef. Like the submissions went up on there, and 24-hour RPG challenges. So like, I don't know. It's very like 2013 reference there. So free game. So I think he ran with it, cleaned it up a bit, and eventually sold it. And it went out of print, as Brett Gillen games tend to do.
Ooh, snap!
Ooh. So what is it? It is a short card-based 2-player RPG. Only 2 players, about this evil overlord and their mindless undead automaton who is struggling with lost memories. So a real upper, right?
Right, yeah.
Just like that game where all the
hit.
characters you create and love die one by one, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
So I played it recently. I was the player, not the GM, and I fucking loved it. It was dark.
That's good.
Yeah, it was dark and it was elegant, and the mechanics that were there, they were there for a reason. They worked, smoothly oiled, loved it. So you have just enough tactics because you do have these playing cards that interact with the fiction in a way, like, for example, the GM poses a challenge, they play a card representing it, you play a card from the deck trying to beat that. That sounds really simple, a little too simple. But then you are getting closer to these mechanics where, let's talk about the end game, you eventually want to build up a strong poker hand to win? No, to have a good fate for your character. So when you are being given these challenges, you might decide that instead of playing this card you drew, you want to keep it for your hand. And when you keep it for your hand, you narrate some memory that is triggered in your undead skull from this scene, and you tell it and you keep that card. And that's interesting because, okay, tactically, you're like, okay, I have an ace. I just drew another ace. I want this card. But what is the memory going to be? And so fictionally, you're constrained by this scene of like, okay, we're at a well. Can I come up with something good? I don't want to sound like an idiot. And maybe you'll come up with something really creative because of the constraint, or maybe it just doesn't work and you have to let the card go. And that's a fun interplay of mechanics and fiction there.
I like that.
And if you fail a challenge, the GM steals one of your cards from your hand randomly. And it could have been that one you really wanted. So just enough tactics, right? Like just enough to help you tell the story. And I love that. Just talk about the tactics one last little bit. I had a great poker hand and then got some cards stolen. In the end game, I was beaten by the GM with a pair of threes.
Oh.
That's sad. I was obliterated. Oh, and another thing, just last thing about the cards. When it gets to endgame, if you have no cards in your hand, so you've not created memories or you have lost too many challenges, you don't get a final scene. You just disappear. Aww. You have no memories, so you're forgotten.
That's grim.
Yeah.
High challenge.
I love that. Like, that's pretty cool mechanics, right?
Here's my question, Tim. After your undead character has recalled a memory, do you then turn out the lights and sit there in the dark for 5 minutes?
The game is dark enough to not need any literal darkness, so I record the session for some podcast called Party of One, and then later I was thinking, wow, did I play that kind of dark? And then I listened to his final episode, and the beginning is just all like trigger warnings, and I'm like, okay, well, sorry about that. I guess it did go dark. So yeah, no lights out, please. Yeah.
Is that available somewhere? The podcast?
Yeah, it's so the person who puts together, his name is Jeff Stormer, and the name of the podcast is Party of One. It's exclusively 2-player RPGs that he records.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, cool, awesome.
I loved it. I would play it again in a heartbeat. My one caveat, and this is coming from a player, but I'm looking at the GM seat. The GM workload felt kind of intimidating. So you, the player. You're undead, right? You can't feel or talk. In fact, you're very much unlike a person. So you're stumbling through this world being given orders, and there's not a lot to run with. And I feel like as the GM, you fill that role a bit by describing this world interacting with you in a way that feels cohesive, and you're throwing challenges at them that, you have to challenge them again and again and again, building up in some way. You don't know when the game's going to end because it happens when a joker is randomly drawn. So it's hard to create this.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to create this arc with that. So it's a lot of work for the GM. I mean, I think in this case, the GM did a great job, but I would be hesitant to have a kind of a novice role player take that on.
Yeah.
I'm even a little intimidated to do it too. So I want to play more of it. A little caveat for GMs, but it was a good time.
Cool. I have one more memory of Cold Soldier to share with you all. So a long time ago, I'm going to give Brett a hard time because I know he listens. A long time ago, I ordered The Final Girl, a physical copy, ages ago, and I got a copy of Cold Soldier in the mail. And I was like, well, all right. I guess this will do. But it's okay. The PDF of The Final Girl has served me very well the last few years, so no complaints.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't find the PDF of The Final Girl, so I found an Italian website that had an Italian translation of it.
Oh, David did that too. David translated it. He translated that Italian Final Girl.
I did too.
He did, yeah. Because I wouldn't share it because I don't share PDFs with other players. I don't do that. Like I don't believe in that. And so like he found this Italian one, and yeah, he translated it.
Oh yeah, I used to work in book publishing, and so I created just a project in InDesign, and I translated and put the whole thing in there and printed it out, and that's what cool. I used for a couple of years.
Oh, you translated it too?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Wow.
Nerds.
Has done two Italian to English translations of a game that exists in English. That's awesome.
I mean, if he didn't start selling it, I would have been selling my bootleg, poorly translated copy, so.
Nice. Okay, cool. Was there anything else you want to say about Cold Soldier?
No, that's it.
Hey, Rich, give us an update on Wandering Monster High School.
Wandering Monster High School. I'm actually just running Wandering Monster High School. Not any of that clever, multi-layer meta stuff that Andrea's pulling off. I'm not quite that accomplished. I'm not next leveling it. It's just Wandering Monster High School that I'm running.
Oh, while you brought it up, did you guys see on the G Plus thread for last week, did you see Tom McGrenery's, sharing his version of that, sort of bait and switch thing
I missed
he did at a con? Okay, so I'll just go ahead and say it on the air. In his game, he had this invisible force field that was constantly cordoning the players in and tightening around them, and they didn't know what it was, and he wouldn't explain what it was until the very end of the session. He takes a snow globe out of his backpack and puts it in the middle of the table. That's it.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. I was like,
that is adorable.
It's something. Wandering Monster High School. Sorry, go ahead, Rich.
That's all right. Wandering Monster High School, part of the Saturday morning cartoons, alt channel, CBS, I guess. A few things I wanted to talk about. Wandering Monster High School, we all have talked about it recently, so hopefully you're aware. It is fantasy monsters in high school in a fantasy setting. The things that I really enjoyed in this session was that, and this happened both times that I've run the game. I've run 2 sets of it, like a 5-session hit of it, and with the Intercontinental Group of Awesome, and now a 5-session hit. We're in the 2nd session with Saturday Morning Cartoons. Is that someone will look at the extracurricular activities, and there's a guild that you can join called the Papers and Paychecks Guild. They're basically the RPG group. And the game that they're playing, Papers and Paychecks, you're playing human office workers arguing about TPS reports and collating and filing. And so that's just a hoot. Well, in this one, Victor White, who is a friend of the Gauntlet, he decided that his character was not only going to participate in PnP, he wanted to teach them this indie game that's a fantasy setting. And so this just became this crazy meta joke of him introducing the small press game Sword, the RPG. we were totally bought in at this point. So I was portraying all of the NPCs at his little gaming group, which included Umwam, the Knoll, who was normally the DM of Papers and Paychecks, and then there was a little kobold guy, cousin of one of the PCs, and they're saying stuff like, wait, this game doesn't use dice? This isn't an RPG? And one of them said, wait, are these intimacy rules? What's this about? Victor just rolled with it. It was so good. Him just getting flustered, and his character didn't have a high kind of charisma, hygiene stat.
Right.
And so he blew the roll to introduce it. So it just became this horrible thing of a bunch of not really wanting to try narrative style mechanics, NPCs just tromping through his scenario. It was hilarious. Oh, it was so great and very cathartic.
It's nice. It's awesome. Do you guys do that? Like well, obviously you do, Rich, or your tables do. Do you do that where you where you have like role playing games being played inside your games? Like, is that a thing? I do it all the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's kind of awesome. Yeah.
I had in Monster Hearts, we had a character, an NPC character. She ran this minis game called Fantasy Hammer, and it was really amazing. Like, because we created the whole we had a whole Fantasy Hammer mythos, and surrounding it. It was pretty amazing. So
that's great.
Yeah, that could be fun.
Yeah, it's good fun. Another thing that I enjoyed in Wandering Monster High School. This is the 2nd session, but due to a player unable to attend, we had a new player come in, create their character. They kind of read through, they knew what was going on. And so the tone that we were playing was very lighthearted. You're playing monsters, but they're not that monstrous, right? They're talking about high school stuff. This is
right, yeah.
Fantasy monsters through the lens of John Hughes, right? And he was playing a character who was a Grell, which is like the brains with the crazy tentacle things. But that's fine. Another PC was a blob. Well, he decided during the slam ball game, he wanted to have this art exhibit, which was effectively human sacrifice. And I me, I try to say yes and then roll with it. And I'm like, oh, that is crazy horrific. And thankful, Daniel Fowler, longtime Gauntlet guy, but from before me, he steps in, he says, hey, that's not exactly how we've been playing it. That's a little much. And it was very respectful, but it was absolutely what needed to be said.
Oh, okay.
And I was really thankful for that, right? That's one of the great things about having a good, accepting table. And our new player was like, oh, I'm sorry. Hey. And we backed off, and I tilted it a little bit. And, the person who was getting quote unquote eviscerated was a vampire, and they got super into it. So it became this weird gorific type, silliness that wasn't necessarily the woe is me stuff.
That's good. Yeah.
And then the last bit that I enjoyed, which is again the Roses and Thorns thing that I've found incredibly helpful, For Hangout play.
And that I always do at the end of every session that I run.
I know you do.
I do.
You don't, but you kind of do. The thing about Roses and Thorns that I find helpful is that in Hangout gaming, you don't have that smoke break post-game kind of hangout thing anymore.
Yeah.
And that's where Roses and Thorns just organically would come up. That's where you got your feedback. And if you don't specifically, explicitly ask for it in a Hangout game, it's very difficult to get it. I found this really, really hard. Now, again, a lot of gamers, they're just kind of there to have fun, and they're going to have fun regardless. Example, Andrea, she's going to have fun regardless. You could throw her in the craziest, crazy monster thing, and she's going to have a good time. She just wills herself to have a good time. And so the feedback isn't always 100% amazing, but it's worthwhile to ask and to kind of set the expectation that you're going to ask. One of the things that I got, and one of the things I got from Wandering Monster High School feedback this time was, I said as a Thorn, I said, I had 3 PCs, and I actually ran almost like 3 separate games because their characters didn't really interact a whole lot. And the feedback was, Daniel said, hey, what if we did a little bit more troop style play? Let me slide into play an NPC. And I'm always a little, I don't like that as a player. When I'm playing, I just want to drop behind the eyes of my dude or dudette, and that's what I want to do. Yeah. And if you throw me into a nut, I guess I get discombobulated. If I'm not the GM, I want to just lock in. But that was a cool suggestion, and the rest of the group was open to it, and so that we're going to roll with that going forward. That is not something that would have come to me, so I was really thankful for that.
Was that Fowler who suggested that?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Fowler was aces, man. He was rocking the table. It was great.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to say about Wandering Monster High School?
No, thank you.
Let's talk about Atomic Highway. Andrea, do tell us about Atomic Highway.
Sure. So Atomic Highway is sort of Mad Maxian. It's, apocalypse has happened. The main feature of the game is, surprising no one based on the name, and the highway, right? It's traveling from town to town.
It makes sense,
right?
Yeah.
Right. So the coolest thing about this book is that it's free. Hooray, free things.
Nice, we like free, yeah.
We decided to take it in a slightly different direction. Instead of going super traditional, post-apocalyptic, gritty, dark, Mad Maxian style, which is like my group norm. So we sort of decided that we were going to make it Camelot. It's adorable. Right. So there's King Arthur.
Yeah.
She has this round table of knights. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it plays out. I was a little surprised because I thought other people would immediately go, oh, I'm going to play a knight. And I was playing a mutant. Mutant is the only flaw in this game. So, of course, there's a random rolly chart. I had to do it. So I decided to play a mutant. And I'm like, oh, she's attracted to this beautiful, shining torch of chivalry and honor. Then everyone else just made a bunch of thugs and bounty hunters and just worthless mercenaries. So that happened. Role players.
Did you hear that, listeners who play in Andrea's game? You made a bunch of worthless thugs.
That's a true story.
You are on notice. Be advised.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to playing and seeing kind of how it all shakes out and how the worthless thugs end up in Camelot and actually helping the king. We have this kind of really cool thing set up for how, Mordred betrays the king, blah, blah, blah. Well, in our little story world, it's her younger sister, Em, and she's this cute little 8-year-old at the start of the story. Nice. So you totally bond with her, and then you find out, oh my gosh, she's going to betray the king, and we're looking forward to that and the drama. But I think it's a really cool take on what otherwise may have been a very tropey setting.
Yeah.
The one thing I find really weird about Atomic Highway that I just can't wrap my little brain around, and this is coming from somebody who plays trad games frequently, is the mechanics.
Okay.
Because you have your attribute bonus, or you have your attribute numbers, you have your skill numbers. So, you go to, you're in a drag race across the wasteland, and you're going to roll driving. So you roll the number of dice in your driving attribute, or in your, the speed attribute, because you want to go fast. But you're counting only sixes as successes. So you count up your sixes.
Okay.
And then you take the number of points you have sunk into driving. So I have a 4 in driving. And then you can spread them out amongst the rest of your dice to try to make more sixes.
Okay.
So more math, as previously mentioned.
Okay. I think I'm following along.
Yeah. So
I'm visualizing it.
It makes sense. Like, it's simple, but it's weird, and I've never quite seen anything like it before.
Do you feel like it's doing anything, or have you had enough time with it yet?
I haven't had enough time with it yet. Also, my dice hate me.
Okay.
Just as a general rule. Like, oh, I have a 4, and I have 4 ones, and 4 points I can put into that. That is not helpful dice. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Let us know, because I'd be curious to find out if there is, like, if that somewhat unusual mechanical resolution system has some kind of bearing on either the assumed setting or the story it's trying to tell or whatever, I guess. Like, I'd be curious if it's doing something, I guess. So,
it's different.
apart from just being, like, novel, yeah.
But I'm mostly excited because it's new and different.
I love that you... I really love having you on the show, Andrea, because I think... I love that your group, that the people you play with, that you guys are so, like, limber and, like, just will take a game, like, wherever, like, you think is an awesome place to take it, you know? Like, I think that's great. I feel like, by comparison, I feel, like, remarkably, like, compartmentalized or something, you know? Like we are doing it this way, and that is the way it's going to be done. So I think that's cool. I'll live vicariously through you, though.
Okay, that's fair. I'll keep you apprised.
Because we're not doing that at my table, listeners. All right. So we will play the story that is meant to be played, and that is that. No, that's awesome. Rich, it sounded like you were going to say something.
Yeah, a few stray observations. I have not played Atomic Highway. I studied up the game. My son and I made characters. He gave me some amazing characters. Because I was going to run it at a con, but it didn't fell through. I feel like the creation of the game, there were cool names and then mechanics forced to them, like it's the V6 engine is the game system. I think that's why it has to be sixes.
Yeah.
The stats, they are an anagram for mutants. Mutants.
Good, yeah.
There's a skill called boat.
Yes, there is.
Boat. That's your skill, boat. Not boating.
Okay. All right.
Boat. Because I think it's hilarious. Boat. I got boat.
Well, you say it like that, it's hilarious. Yeah.
I'm on a boat. I really am excited that you're playing it, Andrea. It's a game that interests me just because it's that Apocalypse World milieu, but a lot more action oriented. They've got some rules. Like, you can download the PDF of like a highway marker to use for kind of almost miniature rules for some of the mechanics for vehicle stuff. So I think there's some neat stuff in there, but I think it's pretty mechanical for a game that's 130 pages.
Yeah. Like I said, trad player sometimes when I want to be. But
Atomic Highway.
There is a whole bunch of rolly charts. Like, every character gets to roll X number of times on these charts just to see what you've scavenged, and it's everything from, like, a manual about, you know, how to repair your car to, you know, the guidebook on electricity to you found 3 bras.
I actually kind of like that. I'm really into that.
Oh yeah, I love it.
I'm into that because, well, you know, I'm into it because I play this game called Funnel World, which is like it's Dungeon World, but like doing the Dungeon Crawl Classics like 0 level character funnel, and you roll up these characters that are just god awful, like they're so stupid and bad, but they come with like 2 pigs, a length of rope, you know, like they have like a single item they come with, some candle wax, and I love it because I love watching the players figure out how to use that stuff. Like, that's fun.
Exactly.
Like, I'm into games that do that. Yeah, I pepper my own Dungeon World games with lots of just random seeming bullshit that is just meant to like be a thing that a player can grab and do something awesome with, you know. So, but
since we're already on that tangent, let me go with the greatest treasure in the Dungeon World home game that I've been running for my 10-year-old son and my wife. The greatest treasure of all so far is a baby pig.
Nice.
That he rescued from a sack in an ogre's cave. That's it, man. He's all about the pig.
Sounds great. Yeah, I
all
love
about that pig. It was an offhand thing where I was just I basically hacked up an old dungeon magazine, and it was in the description. And he's like, "Wait, are the pigs alive?" Yeah, there's a pig alive. Okay, I'm going to save the pig. But there's an ogre. Yeah, we'll kill the ogre. I'm going to save that pig. It's all about that pig.
Nice.
And what did he name it?
Wilbert. With a T. So he's original. He said that. I want to be original, so it's Wilbert.
keep the lawyers away, right?
Tim, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, kids are all about sack pigs these days. It's just a trend.
Didn't even know. Clueless again.
Mm-hmm.
Now I wish there was like a Pokemon Go thing, but like you run around trying to find pigs in sacks. I think that'd be pretty fun. Sack pig.
I think we have our stinger.
Is this alternative reality game where looking around you, every sack could have a pig in it? Like, go out, kids, explore.
All right, well, let's keep going. Is there anything else you want to say about?
I don't think I can follow
what game
up
was
that
this?
comment.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Atomic Super Highway. Is it Atomic Super Highway?
Atomic Highway.
Atomic Highway. Yeah. Cool. Tim, what is Witch Quest?
Well, listeners from episode 69 might remember when I suffered the sick burn of being called trad indie or tradindle.
It was a thing. I remember it. Yeah.
My response this week was to play some obscure games like the out-of-print Cold Soldier or Witch Quest, which is a 1991 Japanese RPG that was never released outside of the country and was fan translated by Aaron Clooney, who folks might know him for that Golden Sky Stories localization. Kind of obscure, right? So
yeah, you're winning the race so far. It's pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Up a few notches there. Good job, Tim.
So it is cool. So if you've ever seen the film Kiki's Delivery Service, it's that. So witches doing errands. The genre of this game has been described as everyday magic. There's quite a bit of whimsy and fun to it. So I actually played this just a couple hours ago, so it's fresh in my memory. It is so fucking fun. It is such a departure from other tabletop role-playing games. So get this, players at the table, you pair up as witches and the cats of these witches. So your players, ideally even numbers, are working in pairs as witches and cats, except the witches and cats use totally different mechanics for like skills, magic, the optional combat rules for interacting with the system. So you kind of work together, but in very different ways, which is just a fun dynamic going on. Let's see, there is crunch in the most odd ways. Like you roll on tables to find out what color your cat's fur is and whatnot. It's a little bit of crunch that like is just where you need it. It reminds me of some reason less than like Dungeons and Dragons and more of like some old console RPG. And like Dragon Quest comes to mind because Japanese. So like the crunch is there just for like fun playing with big numbers and kind of grokking those level ups and stuff like that. But beyond that, it's explicitly stated that all the rules are optional if the table discusses what is the most fun that they all enjoy, because the goal is fun. So it's a nice balance there. I want to give an example of crunch. So you're a witch and you want to cast magic. So you need to know the spell success rate. Well, how do we come up with the spell success rate? Well, easy. So first of all, you have the witch's magical power. What is that? Well, it depends which lunar day it is. Good thing there's a 28-day lunar calendar that you create with your character where you find out which days you're more or less powerful. And that comes from a custom witch tarot card deck that you draw at the beginning too. So that's how you find out your magical power. You then need to find the difficulty level of what you're trying to do. Normally, I hate those GM Fiat difficulty level things, but this one is really fun. It's easy to use. It doesn't feel like you're, overstepping your bounds as a GM.
Right, yeah.
Love it. And then you add to those two things the magic belief level of the target, because it's very different if you're casting a spell on a piece of paper or a town or a child or a pet or a witch, and there's a table for that. Crunchy, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Get this big number, you roll a couple dice, you multiply them together, try to get less than the success rate. But talking about fun, like the fictional, the non-crunchy stuff, witch freaking tarot cards. They are 29 custom cards that come with this. Aaron translated them and made a little PDF of the cards. So they're things like the staff and the river of time and the blood. And you derive so much fiction from them because You draw one as a character for your portent card, so it describes something about your character. It's a really fun way to flesh out some meaning about what you're about. And you also draw the shadow portent card, which is the inverted position of the other one. And so you read and you get the inverted meaning of that. Super cool, right?
Cool. It sounds good. It sounds interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And also I like this little GM tool. It says, so say as a GM, the character enters a town and you don't know what to call it. We'll pick some of those tarot cards and just use the first letters from the different cards and add some vowels. Okay. Sure.
Use every part of the pig, right?
Every part of the pig. So I have no
Unless
complaints.
You find it in a sack, in which case, be careful.
In which case, put it on a pedestal. It is a sack pig.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. So I have no complaints about the game. I just had such a good time playing it. It is severely overlooked, though, because this was just like a fun little project that Aaron did that I think I've heard about people playing. So I encourage folks to check it out. Like, if you like a game like Golden Sky Stories or Ryutama, check out Witch Quest. It is awesome. You can go to Aaron's website, Yaruki Zero Games, and find this free translation of a now publicly available game. Play it, post about it. I want to hear more.
Cool. Awesome. I shall we'll put a link in the show notes for, I guess, is this freely available? Or is it just something that's
free?
Yeah, I downloaded it during this conversation.
Yeah, and the group that put together Adventure Planning Service, once they stopped reprinting it, they released it as free and publicly available.
Okay,
so
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to say about it?
Jason, would you rather be the witch or the cat?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd rather be a pig in a sack, if I'm being honest, right now at this moment. But I'll take the cat, I think.
If you're a cat in a sack, you sound like you're about to get drowned in a river. So that's kind of dark, man.
It's a little dark, yeah.
Trigger warnings at the beginning of this episode.
Yeah. And with that, that's all I have for Witch Quest.
Okay, sounds good. Awesome. Hey, Rich, let's circle back to masks. I'm curious to you kind of tantalized some discussion here.
I did. For the past week, I've been preparing for yesterday's game session of masks. I let my beard grow out for the entire, for a week and a half, because Alex, one of our players, his character was a delinquent, and one of the main through storylines for the last 11 sessions has been he's a delinquent. Both of his parents are supervillains, and one of them is in the Supermax prison called the Spike. He's been seen in a couple scenes, but he's never actually spoken to his father. And we had come up with a narrative reason for him to have to go visit his dad. And so I was totally going to cosplay Technocrat.
What? Okay, so what did you do?
Well, Technocrat...
Did you put a hat on?
In the artist rendition, because Alex drew a lot of the major characters, and he drew Technocrat as this bald man with this mustache that kind of comes down to points and a little bit of a soul patch. And so I grew a beard out, and then I shaved it, and I actually had my phone, and I tried to make my mustache look exactly shaped like that, okay, with the soul patch, all that stuff, the morning of the game. Then everybody meets together, and I'm trying to be coy about, hey, Rich, why do you have a mustache? That looks kind of weird, because I don't look good with a mustache at all. I just can't pull it off. And there was a joke, because they all know Lowell, our good buddy, who's been on the show a bunch of times, and Lowell can totally rock that style. And they were like, oh, you trying to be next Lowell? I'm like, gosh, shut up. And I had the pre-show jitters, right? And Alex, who has a young son, he did not make the game for the first 10 minutes. And his scene was the first scene. So I'm freaking out, and I have pre-show jitters, I call it, type thing, and all these jokes going on. And finally he shows, and I had lighting set up, and I threw an overlay that covered the whole thing, and I had a little bit of light underneath me, back, front lighting coming up, and then I had the whole mustache and everything, black background, black, and then it was just 100% all in character, Technocrat and the sun, and it was awesome. Intense.
That's
and
good.
It
was supremely awesome. He just dialed in from the moment when I flicked off the overlay and they saw me, and I was just stare for like 15 minutes, all I was doing was staring at my webcam with all the intensity that I could muster. And it was so good. It was so great. It was so great. It went really well. The final line from Technocrat before we went to break was, "Don't disappoint me again, boy." And then we took a break. I said, "I need 5 minutes," and I went and shaved the mustache. I came back and Jules was like, "Rich, we're no longer going to be impressed by your silly hats when you play a character."
Oh, you've upped your game too much. You set the bar too high.
Yeah, it's one of those like mic drop, but then you got to come back and say good night, or tell them that there's a merch table or something. It's bad timing. The other thing about Masks High School that I wanted to point out that I was really interested in is that I was so eager to get, because the idea was cosmic. We're going to go cosmic. It was actually in the episode title or the session title. We're going cosmic. We're going to go to space. And so I'm trying to jump ahead. Like, okay, do you guys want to go to the meeting where you're at the place where you go through the gate? And they're like, whoa, wait. We need to have a conversation from the ramifications of the last session. And my character needs to apologize to this person. Hey, we should probably have the team get together and talk about what we're going to do. And I trust this group, so I let them tease stuff out. And it paid off, right? Because they were motivated to have those interactions. That's what Masks is about.
Yeah.
So my instinct was, I really want to jump ahead because I knew I only had so much time after the big Rich wants to do Technocrat crap that I pulled off that I actually have plot.
Right. Yeah. There's like game to be played, right? Yeah.
Right. Like we need to advance plot. Otherwise, it's all going to be like Rich wants to do theater, the mind crap stuff. Let's actually do the RPG part of the G part.
Right.
But they pulled me back, and those were the most successful scenes. Those were the most interesting scenes. And yes, we went to space, and there was some crazy go nuts flying around in spaceships, and we got to save the whole species that's been stolen away, and all that craziness that you would have in a cosmic story. But thankfully, trusted their instincts. And
that's good. Yeah, no, that's really good. I mean, I think there's a line there, right? I mean, like, I think if every player is like sending that signal, like, this is kind of what I want to do, then like, yeah, you go with it, right? I mean, I had a similar thing happen in Monster of the Week where, I thought the session that we started was going to go a certain way because we had kind of left things a certain way. And I kind of like presented my ideas for where I thought it was going to go, but like the players had different ideas. Like they wanted to do this other thing and they wanted to focus on this other NPC, and it's not what I thought was going to happen. But I'm glad that they pulled me back and we did what they wanted to do, because it ended up being a really, really solid set of scenes. So yeah, that's cool. It's good. Awesome. Anything else?
Nope. Thanks.
Cool. So the last game is Palace Gates. That is a game that I played just yesterday with the Story Game Sunday crowd. Palace Gates is part of a collection of games by Mark Valianatos. The collection is called Heads of State, and it's a series of games that are all about, like, I gather about, like, dictators and stuff, like games focused on dictators and tyrants and things. I don't own it myself, and I didn't prep for the game, so I'm just kind of going off what I was told. But so do you guys remember when Saddam Hussein was overthrown in Iraq? Mm-hmm. And like all the news footage you saw was like, soldiers and locals like going into the palaces and like taking out vases and and like fake gold ornamentation and stuff, and like just looting the place basically, right? And also kind of showing like how kind of flimsy everything really was, like it was all just kind of a facade. That's a thing that happens, like on TV, like whenever like some dictator or autocrat is overthrown, right? This game is that. It's about, you play a group of people who are going into the palace of this recently deposed tyrant, and you are finding objects in the palace. And as you find these objects, you tell, as a player, you tell stories about the object, like about why your character thought that object was interesting, or what their connection to it was, and then what that object also tells us about the dictator and what his reign was like and his regime. And So it's very unusual. It's very unique. I think you've still got me, Tim, on Witch Quest in terms of obscurity, just because of temporal distance. But if not for that, I think I would be the winner. It's an obscure subject for a game, right? It's very specific. You make a few characters, and basically once you've made your characters, the gameplay is, it's really just a series of very short little dictated scenes going around the table. And as you're kind of telling your story about the object that you find, other players can spend tokens to make amendments to your story. And if you accept their amendment, then you get the token. You also get tokens. The really cool part of the game is if you get tokens if you like reincorporate details or elements that have already been established in previous little stories, right?
Oh, nice.
Because you're just telling little tiny stories, and it's great. We loved the game. Like, everybody at the table, it was unanimous. Like, everybody had a really great time with it. It does this really cool thing in the sense that, like, well, first of all, so you get these objects, and there's also these other types of little story elements that sometimes you have to work into the game they all come from tables. And the stuff that's on these tables is so great. We've been doing a lot of table-based games lately on Story Game Sunday, and the things on this, like, these objects are so freaking cool. Like, a set of, like, angel wings, like the size of a child, or, like strange, like, little fetish objects or whatever, just lots of little rando things. A copy of, like, or we had one that was it was not on the table, but we had to choose a book, and so we did like L. Ron Hubbard's Dianetics, and we had a whole thing there where we talked about the regime in the 80s, right? There's so many cool things on these tables that you have your creative juices just get flowing in a really cool way. But what I really loved about the game was, and I think what we all really were really hitting and really into, was in the beginning, the stories that your characters are relaying about these objects they find in the palace, they feel like kind of personal to that character, and they also feel somewhat isolated from the other stories because there's no RP that goes on between the characters. It's just dictated scenes. And so each of the stories, like, feels like they're in their own little compartment. But as you keep going around, because you're mechanically incentivized to reincorporate previous elements, it all starts to come together in a really cool way, right? And so you start to learn, like, a lot about, like the characters' possible connections to one another, their connections to the regime. You start to really, really get a good picture of the regime and the dictator himself, or herself, I suppose. It's just really vivid, and it ends up being this really interesting, very, like, real, coherent story. Like, there was no gonzo or anything like that going on. Like, it felt legit, and we decided we were going to play it that way, so maybe that was why we ended up in that spot. But I really think because the game, like, encourages you to go back and look at other people's stories and find ways to make those connections to your story, it creates a really, really nice outcome. I was pretty pleased with it. I don't have anything else to say about it, though. It was freaking awesome. People should hunt it down. I can't say anything about the rest of the games in that collection, but Palace Gates was great.
What time period is it set in?
Well, so it doesn't actually say explicitly in the rules, I don't think, but I think the assumption is, like, present day, like modern day. So we had, like, our dictator ended up, like, coming to power in the 70s and was deposed, like, in the aughts. So
okay.
And so we had, like, a nice, like, range of time to, we talked about, like, the Reagan administration, and we talked about different cultural movements and how they affected the regime, and it was just really cool. And we had one, David was playing, his character was a child. He chose to play, like, a boy who had just wandered into the palace because everybody else was going in there, and he was just there to find his dad because there was, like, some tumult, in the revolution or whatever, and so he was just trying to find his dad. And while he's doing that, he's, like, just picking up stuff, but David's, like, kind of telling the story about the object, but his character is just kind of wandering around. And it was really neat because it turned out that, like, we started to, like, tell the stories in such a way that, like, there was a hint that maybe the child was, like, maybe he was, like, a bastard child of the dictator, or maybe he was, like, connected to another character, and, like, maybe this other character was, like, secretly connected to him, like, as a, maybe he fathered a child. Like, it was really, there was a lot of, like, unspoken mystery, but, like, it was cool. Like, it was really fucking solid. It felt like watching a really, really good ensemble foreign film, I guess. Like, it kind of felt like that, like, it kind of just a little dreamy and kind of like just moving through space, It was neat. It's really cool. And that's all I've got to say about it. So let's go to Giving Me Life. It's Giving Me Life. Rich, what's giving you life?
My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, the TV show, is giving me life. I am one episode away from finishing the first season, which is 18 episodes. And it's not a Netflix show, so there's actually quite a bit of commitment there. It is a musical, modern-day setting. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is kind of an off-putting title. I did not watch it when it was originally aired. It is hilarious. The style of comedy I really enjoy because the humor is very self-deprecating, and there's some interesting relationship observational humor, some relatable characters within there. They're always each of the characters you'll find kind of obtuse at moments and other moments incredibly relatable, and I've been in that moment. There was one episode in particular, I'll call it the bus episode, and it was actually a little too intense for me. I kind of walked away from it for a week because the main character, she's there with the only friends that she's made in West Covina, and they all are off doing their own thing, and there's a moment where she's just by herself in a crowd, and that really hit home. Like, I did not expect that out of a comedy.
Cool.
But the songs are really the highlight, and you can actually pretty much check all of them out on the CW's YouTube channel. Songs such as the Sexy Getting Ready song, the Settle For Me love song, the Jap rap, which is Jewish American princess rap, Flooded with Justice, I'm the villain in my own story, I gave you a urinary tract infection. These songs are bizarre and very unique. It's totally worth checking out. All kinds of different song styles, and it's just sharply written. It's much better than I expected, and I've really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Andrea, what's giving you life?
I have been reading Flyboys by James Bradley, which I picked up at Barnes & Noble purely because it was buy two, get one free. Yeah. Well, the other two are like hardcore sci-fi, and then I'm like, I don't know, I guess I'll pick this up and see if my brother wants to read it. So I decided to read that one first so I could pawn it off on him, but like I can't put it down. It is such a good book. It's about 9 flyboys, fighter pilots or bomber pilots that are shot down in the Pacific during World War II. It's a true story, one of which was George H.W. Bush, and out of all the stories they follow, he's the only one that came back alive. It's a really intense story. I'm not quite to the actual, I've met the characters and I kind of know a little bit about them and how young they were and their hopes and dreams. But what I really am enjoying about the book is it really goes into detail about the propaganda on both sides of the Pacific. The American propaganda, just how badly they treated the Japanese Americans, and just the things like they had this video, for example, of American pilots shooting at innocent civilians, and they would play it in theaters and people would clap because the American public they had dehumanized them so much. And then of course they do the Japanese version of it, and how Americans and anyone who wasn't Japanese was looked down on. So it's really good and it's really intense, and I think it really highlights the horrors of war.
I was about to say cool, but that doesn't seem appropriate.
I know, it's like I'm kind of embarrassed. I'm excited about this, but it's a really good book. Yeah. And last night I was trying to go to bed, but I'm like, oh my god, they just bombed the U.S. What happens next?
That's awesome. I feel like I heard about that once, like on NPR or something. So yeah, that's sounds pretty neat. Tim, what's giving you life?
Bow.
Come again?
Oh, do I need to say more? Yeah, I've been cooking a lot. So these steamed and baked Chinese buns with filling, and that's just I don't know. I was doing a lot this weekend. I think it's the whole back to school craze where I want to make a ton of something and then freeze it and then defrost it for lunch, and it's really fun. So I spent my weekend. I roasted up an entire pork shoulder, nice char siu, and then cut that up and made some buns, and wow. That's what I do when I'm not playing witch games.
Okay. Awesome. The thing giving me life is, okay, so we released the test version of the first issue of Codex, our little magazine, Codex Blood, which is the test issue the first issue is called Blood. we released the test version of it, and in an effort to kind of get people interested in it and to get like submissions to future issues and to just kind of attract some, just kind of attract some interest and get people to want to engage with it. And but now we have the final version just released. Actually, the day of this recording is when I put it out there. We have this beautiful, beautiful layout done by Ollie Jeffrey. It looks just gorgeous, and I'm so excited about it. I'm really excited about it. Like, it just looks so fucking beautiful, and I can't handle it. So anyway, we had about 1,000 people download the first like, kind of janky looking one, the test one. If you're listening, go get the new one. It's on the website, so go get the cooler new one with the sweet layout. But for anybody who's paying attention, that new one, Ollie's going to be helping out with all the future issues, and so they're going to look like that. So, like, if you like the quality of that one, the just the overall like kind of styling of it, the design of it, that is what you can expect with Codex. So I'm pretty pumped about that.
It looks great. It really does.
Yeah. He did a terrific job. I was just so like. I was really beside myself. I was just like so thrilled. So I'm feeling really good about it. Well, so that was our show. I encourage listeners to go check out our website, gauntlet-rpg.com. You will find links to Codex, as well as our various podcasts and our meetups, including Gauntlet Hangouts, where we run a ton of online games. We are also on Twitter at Gauntlet RPG. Real quick, where can we find you, Andrea?
Ivory Thorns on Google+.
Rich?
ORKLORD on the Twitter.
And Tim?
Twitter, pocket-sized play.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And listeners, thank you for listening. Awesome. Cool. Well, I say proud of him like I'm his father or something. It's ridiculous. I mean, like, proud of him in the sense that, like, I've played lots and lots of games with Fowler, and I'm glad he's doing awesome things. So that's all I mean. Anyway, edit that. All right.
I'm so proud of you, Daniel.
I'm so proud of you, Daniel Fowler. I regret I don't know whose game this is on the notes. So whoever it is, just speak up.
It's mine.
Andrea, awesome. Sorry, listeners, sorry. We have the notes arranged slightly differently today, so I'm lost.